It was just before 10 p.m., July 17th, 1944. Along the quiet shores of the San Francisco Bay, a blinding light split the sky, followed by a roar so loud it was felt 30 miles away. The earth shook, windows shattered. People thought it was an earthquake. But what happened at Port Chicago Naval Magazine wasn't a natural disaster. It was man-made and avoidable. 2 cargo ships were being loaded with thousands of tons of munitions, explosives bound for the Pacific Front. The men doing this perilous work were mostly young black sailors, many barely 18 or 19. Most had never been trained to handle live ammunition. They were ordered to work fast. There was no room for hesitation. Then, just like that, everything exploded.
This is African American History is American History.
The blast at Port Chicago Naval Magazine in Port Chicago, California, killed 320 men, most of them African American sailors, and injured nearly 400 others. The shock wave was so powerful it registered 3.4 on the Richter scale. Of the 320 dead, only 51 could be identified. The rest were vaporized. The Port Chicago disaster remains the deadliest homefront tragedy of World War II. But for those who survived, the nightmare didn't end with the explosion. In the days that followed, the Navy gave the surviving black sailors a choice: return to the same unsafe conditions or face punishment. These men had just seen their friends blown apart. They knew the risks, and they refused. Their act of defiance, courageous, principled, and necessary, would go down in history as the Port Chicago Mutiny. But the Navy didn't see it that way. 50 of the men were court-martialed for mutiny, a charge that could have brought the death penalty. They weren't just punished for refusing unsafe orders. They were punished for being black men who dared to say, enough.
This is African American History is American History.
The trial was a travesty. Evidence was ignored, racial bias was everywhere, and yet something happened that changed everything. Thurgood Marshall, then lead counsel for the NAACP, flew in to observe. He couldn't represent them legally, but he made it clear this wasn't justice. This was racism in uniform. He argued that the Navy's failure to provide adequate training and safety protocols directly led to the disaster. Marshall emphasized that the term mutiny was being misapplied to unjustly punish the sailors for their legitimate safety concerns.
This is not 50 men on trial for mutiny. This is the Navy on trial for its whole vicious policy toward Negroes. These men were scared, and rightfully so. They had every reason to refuse to go back to those same conditions that caused the explosion in the first place. No, this is not mutiny. This is nothing but a setup.
He pointed out the systemic racial discrimination in the Navy, noting that African American sailors were relegated to the most dangerous tasks without proper training or safety measures. He emphasized that this was a clear example of racial injustice, as the black sailors were treated as expendable labor.
This is African American History is American History.
The press took notice. So did the public, especially black newspapers like the Pittsburgh Courier, which folded the story into its ongoing Double V campaign, victory abroad and victory at home against racial injustice. Eventually, most of the Port Chicago 50 were released, but the stigma remained. Their records, their futures tarnished, simply for standing up for their lives. But they changed history for the better. Port Chicago wasn't just an explosion. It was a turning point, a spark in the long, hard fight to desegregate the U.S. military. President Truman would officially desegregate the armed forces just 4 years later, in 1948. And yet, here we are, 2025. Black service members still face disproportionate punishment, still report discrimination. The uniforms may have changed, but the racism, too often, hasn't. The story of Port Chicago isn't just history. It's a warning. It's a reminder of how injustice can wear an American flag and call itself duty. But it's also a testament to the courage of 50 black sailors who chose dignity over obedience, who said, "We will not die for a country that doesn't even care enough to train us to live."
This has been African American History is American History. I'm Harlan Kearsley. Thank you for listening. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe. Once you do, you'll be notified as soon as new episodes are posted. Thanks again, and please stay safe. African American History is American History. Copyright H.C. Kearsley, 2025.